All right. Good job, Becca Ramani. I know technology is your favorite. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Nicole Block, and I am one of your hosts from Hints from HR. We're super excited that you're here with us today. As usual, I've got my partner in crime, Becca Ramani, the Vice President of the Texas Apartment Association's Education Foundation. Hey, Becca, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm actually here in DFW. You guys know I travel a lot, so I'm excited to be home and live, I guess, from DFW. That doesn't happen very often. So today we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. We have a really special guest who is an expert, and we're really excited to just have her lend her, just her lens and her expertise onto recruiting. So today's topic is recruiting is the new marketing, which we're going to dive into here in just a little bit. But I'd like to introduce you guys to Kara Rice. Kara, if you can give us an introduction as far as who you're with and what you do and kind of how you got into the industry, that would be really fantastic.
Sure. Thank you, Nicole. It is a joy to be here with you both. Thanks for the invitation. I'm Kara Rice. I'm the Chief Communications Officer with Swift Bunny, and we are a supplier partner to the multifamily space, and we are focused on employee engagement. So we work with owners and managers to help them figure out what's making their teams happy and what's making them perhaps not so happy, so that they can make some changes and fully support their team members in order to make the workplace work well for everyone. The ultimate goal there being employee retention, because that makes everything better for the business. So we were chatting before we went live, Nicole. I actually started in the industry in 1991. So I think that makes me like the industry's grandmother. I don't know how I got here so quickly, but I'm okay with that.
Listen, I'm the great aunt right behind you. I mean, I started in 94, so we're fine.
Yeah. So I started on the leasing side, and I think others probably have a similar story. I was renting first, and then the community where I lived was hiring. And I thought, sure, this sounds awesome. Really knew very little about it. But 30 plus years later, here I am. And it's been a very interesting, challenging, dynamic, and overall satisfying ride. So it's great to be here.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. So, if you guys in the audience remember, we've had Swift Bunny on several times. They are definitely a repeat guest. We feel like they bring a lot of just industry specific data. Sometimes when we're surveying things, it's multifamily and every other type of service that's out there. And this is specific to multifamily. So we find that it's definitely more intentionally focused for what we do as a supplier, as an operator, and again, the job seekers. So as we mentioned, we're talking about how recruiting is the new marketing. As if you guys know as well, we do have our TAAEF Resource Center, and we talk about how the focus there is to help you to recruit, train, and then retain, right? So we always talk about those three things. And so for today's topic, we're going to really dive into the recruit piece of it. It doesn't mean that training and retention aren't important to Swift Bunny or to us, but we want to ensure that we stay kind of laser focused on the recruiting because it is definitely different than it was. So, as Kara mentioned, she started in 91, I started in 94, but I can remember when I was switching jobs in 98, like I literally just walked in to an office with my resume, right? And that's how companies found people. Really, the people found them in many cases. And so if you can speak a little bit, Kara, to like 1991 versus even 4 years ago to right now, what are some of the big differences you're seeing in recruiting that we can talk about?
Sure. Yes, to your point, when I was new to the business, it just wasn't that hard to find people. In fact, as I just shared, they hired me because I was a resident and they were like, oh, she's nice, she's friendly, she could probably do this, so they came to me. But the world has changed a lot in a lot of different ways. And in particular, in the last couple of years, I would say maybe 3 to 5. And I'm sure that I'm not telling you anything you don't know very intimately from the operator side, Nicole.
Yeah, no, I think so. Definitely. So what are some of the things that kind of talking through it? So again, we talked about where we were and what's changing, but maybe talk about like why recruiting is kind of everyone's job, like maybe kind of set that level set of expectations so that we can, first of all, anyone that's in this audience, whether you work, in multifamily or about to, like once you are with your company, let's talk about how recruiting is really everyone's job and why that's so important.
And Nicole, if there are any questions from the audience, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll be monitoring that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you for doing that, Becca, because I'm a horrible multitasker. So it's hard for me to talk and watch that chat at the same time. So I'm grateful that you're doing it. Yeah. All right, so to set the stage a little bit, let's talk about why it is so challenging right now. I'm sure everybody who's joined us here today is in pain a little bit with trying to fill empty seats, and no surprise, we're deep into this labor shortage, which has eased up a little bit. So things are getting a tiny bit better, but not really all that much better. There just are more open jobs than there are qualified candidates, and so that means we have to really be creative because candidates are not going to fall from the heavens. We have to drum them up. In addition to that, candidate expectations have changed a little bit. You know, the world changed significantly during COVID, and we all learned that, hey, all those things that, we thought couldn't happen, like flexible work lives, maybe being able to do hybrid work. We were told, no, you can't do that. Well, we learned, yes, we can, because we pulled it off, and candidates are still looking for some of that flexibility, perhaps. So, things have changed a little bit. Candidates are more in the driver's seat. But also another big factor, Nicole, is that demographics are shifting. So we have an aging population. We have a lot of folks retiring and not as many coming into the workforce, which is a real challenge. And that actually is predicted to continue. So unfortunately, it feels like the labor pool isn't really going to get better. So that means that we have to get better in our own recruiting strategies. And you are absolutely right when you say that it is everyone's job, because the staffing situation, every executive that I talk to right now lists that as one of, if not the top priority within their organization, is hanging on to employees or finding new employees. Does that feel true to you in your experience, Nicole?
Yeah, I would definitely feel like we're trying to find that. And one of the things I wrote down whenever you were speaking is that we have less qualified candidates that are out there. So it doesn't mean, and I think that recruiting, I use the term kind of form over substance. And I feel like recruiting as a buzzword has become like a checklist, like someone else's job, right? We have recruiters, we have internal recruiters, we put something up on Indeed and then you get 27,000, of unqualified candidates. And then it becomes the admin task to sort through all of those types of candidates, right? So I think recruiting has changed. Instead of it being something that is like something to help us, it's just become kind of a tool that's kind of dragging us down as far as just that, to find the quality, if that makes sense. And so that's the part of it that rings true with me, is that, if you have a recruiting department, I think that everyone else tends to be hands off. Like, oh, you know what, ABC person has it. So I'm waiting for resumes, and although that's part of it, but there's also a piece of it that I think is kind of everyone else's responsibility. So I definitely think it resonates, but I think it's just a re-education again, because we just have to continue to update with the times.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you brought that up, because that's a shift that I've noticed in the last several years, is more and more operators have recruiters on staff. That wasn't always the case even 5 years ago. So I put that in the plus column. That's amazing that we're getting that sophisticated, and it's a good thing. On the other hand, exactly what you just said, it sometimes can have the effect of making others who don't have recruiting in their title think, this is not my problem. I'm not responsible for this. And I really would encourage everybody who works in the industry to own this. But it really should be a part of everybody's job and considered everyone's problem. And to the title of our conversation here, recruiting is the new marketing. It's a marketing effort. Every single person who works for your organization represents the company and is a part of the company's brand. And they have the power to attract or repel folks from thinking that they want to work with your organization. So I think it's so important from the top down in every organization to embrace that and think, as we go about our business, as we go out in the world, we want to be seen as an employer of choice for anyone we interact with.
It's also definitely, it behooves the rest of the staff to be thinking about who they can recruit, because if there's an open position, who's going to do that work? And it's going to fall to those associates who are there, who are going to have to pick up the slack for that open position. So that's a pretty good incentive to help recruit and market these opportunities to people you know, or people in your community and your network.
Yeah. Well, and I think that one of the things that you said, Kira, I know you and I, we're talking again kind of in our intake session, is that, we have to always be cognizant that when we are at an apartment association function, or we're just out in day-to-day life, or you're mixing and mingles with your friends and family, like you're always a reflection, whether you believe it or not, you're always a reflection of your personal brand and your professional brand. And so people are making choices of, hey, I would love to work with that person, or, hey, I would love to work with that company. Or again, like you said, repel, like, okay, I'm checking that one off the list. And so I think that being more intentional about being the face of your company, so you can become an employer of choice, is just something that I think we're missing. We're missing, there's pockets of excellence, right? There's people that definitely do that. But I think that we should put some intentionality behind it. I think that that's definitely something that makes sure that you market it the same way you're marketing on your Google Analytics, like which words are people searching you for? Well, okay, what type of culture, going back to several of our other topics, what type of culture am I promoting every time that they meet Nicole Block from Brookfield Properties? Like what am I putting out there? So what can you speak on maybe the impact you've seen with that? I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it reminds me of maybe 15 years ago, maybe it's 20 years ago now, when we were first having conversations about managing your online reputation in terms of what renters are thinking about you. It's the same thing with employers. You have a reputation, whether it's one you've cultivated or not. You have one. And so, to your word, I love it, intentionality. This is what's important right now. Let's be intentional about what that reputation is. It starts with some thoughtful conversations internally, and that can happen at every level. It can happen at your community level, at your regional level. It doesn't have to come from the very top of your organization, but start with, the team that you work with, and talk about what you want your reputation to be in this space. What is it presently, and what do you want it to be, in order that you can attract new team members that are suitable for your organization.
Yeah, and Becca brings up a great point in that, I think sometimes the on-site or frontline associate doesn't realize how much power that they really have. I mean, leadership has no title. We've said that 1,000 times. And I also would take it one step further that, yes, you're going to fill this position, and so you don't have to do that extra work. But I would take it one step further to think, like, if I had a say in who's going to work next to me, who would I want to work next to me? And so I think that, and as a current associate, I know the culture better than anyone else. So I can also see, like, who is a culture fit, who's not a culture fit. And I think sometimes we don't realize, again, the influence that we do have. So anyone in the audience, you don't have to, be running a portfolio. No, you could just be a leasing associate that is a front line and holding that team together. Right. So it's just, there's not really a title that goes along with it. And I think that we miss that opportunity to be able to be intentional about that. And I think, again, to your point, that it has to be a consistent message through every layer of the company, is that we're constantly, like we used to say, what, ABC, always be closing. Maybe we change it to ABR now. It's like always be recruiting, right?
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I think you are so right. Wouldn't you like to have a say in who your coworkers are? Wouldn't you like to be able to influence attracting the best and the brightest to work with your team?
Yeah.
Well, you really do, as long as you embrace that is a part of your job, even if it's not in your job title or in your job description. And I would argue, if you're in charge of the job descriptions, put it in there, make it everybody's focus, because it is that important.
Yeah, job descriptions was a whole other topic too. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it is. A thought that I had from a comment you made earlier was about, networking when you're out in the market, say you're at your local association things. Some leaders can potentially feel a little bit threatened by these types of conversations. Like, I don't want my people being recruited at every event that they go to. And I understand that concern. On the other hand, what I want to say is it isn't so much that you're always on the prowl and trying to steal somebody away from somebody else, but what you're trying to do is build these relationships. If you make a contact at one of your peer competitors, if you will, and you make a connection with them, it isn't necessarily that you're hunting them in particular, but they may know people. You know, if you've got a good connection with them and a respect for how they work and how they carry themselves, they have other relationships and you build that relationship with them and it might lead to a connection with somebody else. So I really think we just need to get over, if you have any hangups about being threatened by, these networking opportunities that folks are going to get recruited away. I think we just need to get past that, and it's for the good of the industry as a whole.
Yeah, but I would also take one step back. If you are an operator or a job seeker or a supplier that, does have that aversion to it, then is the aversion, I would just ask yourself the question, is the aversion that you haven't built the culture that your team would be attracted to, right? Is it an insecurity, or is it that you as the recruiter don't feel comfortable projecting that culture for your company to attract? Because a lot of it is just, you're going to attract the right people. It's not necessarily, you're right. I'm not out on the prowl going, okay, I need to find a new, it's not that. So I would just say that if you do have an aversion or you're coaching someone that does, I would find out what that aversion really was about. Is it that they're really afraid someone's going to get poached? And if they are poachable, then what can you do? That kind of goes to that other retention piece. We'll talk about it another day. But I do think that the question is valid, because to your point, that it's really good for everyone. And you wouldn't not advertise on a certain ILS because your competitor did. No, you absolutely go where the competitors are, right? That's where you go. So, so I think by recruiting and looking at it really with that kind of twist on words with marketing, I think you probably should do things you've never done before, because you want to get results you've never seen before. So you can't keep doing the exact same thing. Let's talk a little bit about building a pipeline of talent.
Nicole, one real quick point just about that goes into building a pipeline. But when you're marketing something, you're marketing oftentimes to a new audience and you're trying to get new people. And I think an important component of this conversation is the operators being comfortable hiring people with less experience than they may think they need. And so if you're marketing, you're wanting to build your audience, you're wanting to expand that and reach new people, not necessarily the people you'd see at an apartment association event, although that's a very valid part of the conversation, but finding new people and then being comfortable with bringing them in at a lower experience level than may be ideal or may be beneficial for a little less experience in a lot of cases.
Yeah, because culture is culture. It has nothing to do with skill, right? I mean, really that, it's not about the specific administrative checking of the box. If it's a culture fit, we hire for attitude, you can train for aptitude.
Yes.
And I know we've said that, I don't know, maybe 4,000 times on this podcast. So I think that the audience is like, we get it, guys. But no, we want to keep reminding you, like, you want to, if the talent pool is shallow, you've got to go swim in other ponds. Like, you got to find something else, But no, so speaking of that, truly, we got to build a pipeline for talent as well. So let's talk a little bit about how you guys envision that at Swift Bunny, or your experience in building a pipeline, Kara. If you can speak on that, it'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. The pipeline of talent, I think, is so important. And it's really about being very deliberate or intentional in your networking activities, always thinking about these relationships that you have in the space, thinking about maybe not even what your open positions are right now, but what they are likely to be, so that when those openings arise, you don't have to start from zero, but you have contacts that you can kind of activate and either get them into a hiring process or find out who they know that might be suitable for getting into kind of a hiring process. So the pipeline of talent, how you nurture that, it happens both in the real world, in your interactions, as we've talked about, say at association meetings, et cetera, or even outside of our industry space. It's everybody you interact with. It's all your service providers. I mean, I think probably everybody who's here with us today knows somebody who came into the industry from someplace else. Maybe they were
Sure.
the amazing manager at the dog groomer's office, where the regional took her dog and then they started this relationship. Yeah. So yeah, you just never know where you're going to be able to find great people. So in the real world, but also online. And a lot of this pipeline building can happen through relationships that you build. Most often it's on LinkedIn, but it could be your other social networks as well.
Yeah.
And I think both of those spaces are very valuable, and what's going to work best for you might depend on the region that you support. So if everything that you support is in one specific city or market, then the face-to-face relationships might be the most important place for you to expend your energies. But I know you, for example, Nicole, you've got communities here, there, and everywhere. And you can't be in all those markets in every week. So probably your LinkedIn relationships are going to be very important to your pipeline. You can have conversations with folks on LinkedIn and reach more people that way than you can through cocktail events at your local associations.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was going to mention too. And some of the challenges we have are in our remote markets as far as recruiting and kind of getting the boots on the ground to the local when we're not local. So that definitely we've had to be very creative in where we market, and it's definitely been more intentional, and definitely more of a an online, definitely an online effort for sure. So speaking of online, and so I know that one of the things we've talked about too is how do we showcase our brand? So so let's say we do have a culture that we're super proud of, we're pumped about our company. We just got to figure out like how to get the word out. So walk us through some maybe either good examples or like some tips and tricks over, how you see we need to showcase, our employer brand.
Sure. Again, this is something that shouldn't exclusively fall to someone who has recruiting in their job title. Yeah. This is really the job of everybody, particularly those who are supervisors and leaders. But importantly, you want to make sure that online, your posts are not purely about we are hiring for a maintenance tech in DFW. Okay, who isn't, right? Everybody.
You're like, thanks, right? Everybody is, yeah.
So you definitely want to showcase your personality online. And the companies that I see that are having really great success with recruitment do a great job of that. They regularly have posts that show off their team members. They may spotlight individual contributors. They post a lot of things about activities that the team is doing together, whether it's like an awards banquet or maybe some volunteer work they're doing in the community. Really, they're just trying to show off to the world what it's like to work at that space and the dynamism of it all. And that helps them to build that employer brand, because job candidates are like prospects in that they're going to investigate and find out what they can about a company when they're considering working there. So the more posts like that you have online, the better you will be served in making them feel like this is a place where they want to be.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense too, because, kind of putting that back on the prospect lens is that, we might not be looking for a job now, but we might be in 6 months, or, or you might know someone, to Becca's point, that's like, oh, I'm moving to XYZ and I want to get into the industry. Do you know anyone? You're like, hold on over here. So I think that there definitely is a connection that can be made, even if it's not personally for you. It's kind of like that tangential, thought process. So, and it has to be consistent though, right? It's like, it has to be like, I love that you're like consistently post about our people and what we're doing and the dog party we had at the office, or what, whatever it is, just to show what you're doing that's not specifically administrative, because you have to showcase your culture, like who you are, not what you do, right?
And this is where that literal partnership between HR, who typically manages the recruiting function, and marketing comes in handy, because I like to say that HR can be the steak, like they know what job openings there are or are coming up, but marketing is the sizzle. And together that's really powerful, because marketing is probably going to put together better social posts than the HR team, right? No, this is no diss against HR, but that's marketing's skill set. So team up together and use the marketing folks to help you and your company put your best foot forward. And
Yeah.
on a
And I
smaller
think
scale, Nicole,
oh,
this
go
can
ahead.
happen at a
Yeah.
smaller scale too, even if it's not your marketing department. If it's your region, there might be somebody within your region who's really good at Canva. Tap
Right.
that person to make the best posts that are supporting your activities.
Yeah, and I think anytime you're looking at your team and looking at the team dynamics and their strengths and being able to utilize those, and going back to really this is everyone's job. So who here is good at X, Y, and Z? Who wants to put a video up? And I know that you mentioned that you want to like encourage employee evangelists. I love that, kind of love that phrase that someone who's so passionate about working for where they work and working for who they work for. And putting those up. I don't feel sorry. There's sirens behind me. I promise
it's
I'm safe.
Real life. I get it.
I know. It's like I'm in downtown Dallas. Now y'all know. But I just wanted to kind of ask a little bit more about when you say like look to encourage employee evangelists. What does that look like? How has that been successful? What have you seen that work?
Oh yeah. So I am guessing that there are some employees that you support who basically live their lives online, right? Everything that they do gets shared to their socials.
Sure.
So I would encourage you as a supervisor to think about your team and who is it that's, a very active poster. And then also think about your team and think who really embodies the brand that we want to convey as an employer,
right?
And look for the overlaps there. It's a little Venn diagram. Okay, so who among your team is very active on social and is also a great representative of your organization? And talk to that person about potentially being an employee evangelist. Some of your folks, I have no question in my mind, are doing this already anyway.
It's right. It's just harnessing it.
Yeah, but you could formalize it and make it an additional part of their responsibilities. And I'm talking about just being a voice for the company, sharing information, and you want it to feel as genuine as possible. So just, like day in the life kind of posts. This is what it's like to work on site. Here's 10 interesting things that happened to me on a Monday, any kind of shares like that, and possibly include a hashtag that you have determined together would work really well for you. I want to share one example of somebody that I think is fantastic at this, and that is Tony Souza with RPM, and he's out of San Antonio. If you don't follow him, you're in the minority because almost everybody does, but he is such a great brand evangelist, and everything that he does. I shared it at my TAA session. There was this one post of him and coworkers, just a selfie taken in a parking lot. Like, how much fun could that be? But let me tell you, it looked like they were having an absolute blast. And, he always uses the hashtag We Are RPM. And it just makes you think, what's going on over there? That looks like a good time. I want to learn more about that. So that's what I'm talking about with employee evangelism. You've got folks on your team I know who are absolutely would be killer at this. And it may just take a conversation to activate it.
Yeah. And I think that just kind of flipping the script on it, because I know when social media first came out, we were actually discouraged from being friends with people we worked with. We were discouraged from, leadership and those types of things. So I think we just need to ask ourselves those questions on what does that look like now? So you've given us so much to think about. I mean, as we're kind of wrapping things up, I mean, we just, we always enjoy having our experts come on and kind of show the world through their lens. So Kara, thank you. You've given us a lot to think about, as a job seeker, again, the operators and suppliers that are out there. How are you recruiting? What does your marketing look like right now? And can you, take any of these steps in order to just be that employer of choice? As usual with Hints from HR, we want to ensure that you're asking the right questions. We don't have all the answers. We don't pretend to have all the answers at all. But we hope just to provoke questions so that you guys can be just more fulfilled in this industry. So as a kind of housekeeping thing, we have our How to Speak maintenance, July 26th. Is that correct, Becca?
That's right. We'll be talking about AI in the service field and how we can benefit from it and not necessarily be afraid of it. So looking forward to that conversation as well.
All right. Well, fantastic. Again, Kara, it's been our pleasure. Becca, as usual, my partner in crime, I'm loving it. I hope you guys stay cool out there. It is a hot summer day here in DFW. I don't know where you guys are, but I hope it's not 105 with 60% humidity. But if it is, we'll get through it together. So anyway, have a wonderful, wonderful time. We'll see you next time on Hints from HR, and we'll take care.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.